Now, let's take a closer look at issues around child offenders and how juvenile facilities rehabilitate young offenders. I'm joined for this conversation by Jacqueline Hoorn, the Advocacy and Lobbying Manager at the National Institute for Crime Prevention. Good to have you with us this afternoon, Ms. Hoorn. First of all, in your experience working in the area of juvenile rehabilitation, what have you found to be some of the key causes for juvenile delinquency and juvenile criminality?
Good afternoon, Thami, and to the listeners. As NICRO, maybe just to start off, we are a national NGO and we are based in 7 provinces. And in some of these provinces, about 3 of them, they specifically focus on youth rehabilitation, and we term it as youth diversion, because we work with youth, with adults that's in conflict with law, with people that's in conflict with law. And what we would identify as, some of the key or main focuses for youth offending behavior, it's a lot of factors that you have to consider. It's the individual, the family, the community, and even society where the individual, comes from.
As far as the gender is concerned, are we finding more girls than boys or more boys than girls, or is there a bit of equilibrium there as far as youth offenders being girls or boys?
I don't have, accurate stats for you, but what we can say is, or confirm, is that there's been an increase with female offending behavior, but the majority of juvenile behavior, male versus female with juveniles, is the male population.
Now, if we look at the over 135,000 prisoners that we have in South Africa, over 1,100 of them are actually youth. Is prison the best place to be putting the youth? And what other alternatives and options are there for youth rehabilitation?
Thank you so much, Thami, for this question. And I think that is one of NICRO's, core business, where we want to present and bring about awareness for alternatives to incarceration. We are of the belief that prison should not even be an option, because the aftermath and even the dynamics within our prison system and overpopulated prison system, it just has multiple negative impact or influences on individuals, family, community, and so forth. So that is why NICRO, one of NICRO's core streams is to present alternatives to incarceration, and that is through our diversion stream, and that is through our courts. We work very closely with courts, where we look at crimes, the type of offenses, and then we present or we recommend that the individual rather get intervention than incarceration. And then we do our different, intervention programs with individuals.
And talk us through some of these intervention programs. Do they involve the removal of the said youth from their current environment and perhaps a seclusion or exposure to a different way of life? How are those structured?
Because this intervention or diversion is not, it's not facilitated or in a facility. You are as part. It needs to form part of your daily living. It's just you are now being. You now need to take responsibility, and NICRO is then one of the agencies to help keep you accountable and take this responsibility. So you would, if you are a youth between 18 and even 21 or 22, and you are working, remember this: you've been caught, you've been arrested, but the type of offense is classified as a petty offense, and because of the offense, the court then recommends that you can do interventions with NICRO. So at NICRO we assess, and from the assessment there we can identify which type of interventions, and the interventions could be individual counseling, adult life skills, which is more linked to decision making, anger management, adult substance abuse, community service learning, just to name a few.
You mentioned the importance of the nature of the offence, and that will determine then the sort of diversion project that you put in place. In an instance where it is murder, for example, because we do have children who have murdered and who do murder, what do you then put forward as solutions for that?
Murder is then classified as a more serious crime, and that is in a Schedule 3. We mostly work with Schedule 1s, which is your, low or petty crimes, not serious crimes. So when in a case of murder, within the Western Cape, I'm based in the Western Cape. So in the Western Cape, we have the Department of Social Development that works with your juvenile offenders. So what the process is, they also get assessed, and then probation officers then allocated to the individual, and then, from their assessment, once again, they will then identify they can recommend to the court which type of intervention or which treatment plan this individual should then follow. They also look at the age, the nature of when the offense took place. So a lot of factors. And as you know, our courts work with evidence. So whatever evidence, is brought to the matter, all of those things are considered. But once again, what NICRO's stance would be is that to get not just the individual that committed the offense through a rehabilitation program, but also the family and the victims that had to was also impacted through this offense, to also go through the rehabilitation process. Rehabilitation is not just for the offender, the one that made a mistake and that person need to make amends, but it's also for victims and the family and even greater community to find healing in this wrong that was done.
Jacqueline, I'd like us to focus on the very incident and very tragic events that happened in Limpopo with the young Lufuno Mavunga killing herself after a spate of being bullied. In the instance where the 14-year-old girl has now been charged with assault, how would you, as NICRO, deal with a situation like this? What would be your recommendations for her rehabilitation? And I guess not only her, but the group of girls that she was involved with as well.
Thami, this is, when having to respond to such a, immense, case, but just the basic process that we follow, and this is not what our recommendation would be in this case particular, but the process that we would follow is to assess the 14-year-old, try and get the holistic background and understanding where is this behavior stemming from, not blaming the background, but also getting perspective and understanding of the circumstances that rose and brought, bringing this individual to this point or level of, violating someone else, publicly. But we would also then, in collaboration, work with the family, because this is a minor and you have to get consent from parents. So with the assessment, with the consultations, those type of, interviews will help design the intervention that is appropriate for the individual. I think one of the questions that I would like to ask to the listeners, what would we like, or how would we want to see our South Africa and our youth in particular, and also maybe with specific reference to bullying, do we want to address the root cause? Where is this stemming from, and can we, alleviate this, or do we want a quick fix? Because as I mentioned earlier, to incarcerate someone for their wrongdoing, you have to acknowledge your wrongdoing. However, the question is, do you want, should we incarcerate someone, like punish the person, let them be sent away, and hoping that this problem will not continue? So yeah, I would like to maybe leave that also with the listeners. How would we like to see, this addressed, this root cause? How can we address the root cause of bullying? Because when someone takes their own life, it's extremely sad.
Before we round off today, I mean, as NICRO, you've been around as an organization long enough to be able to see the impact and the effects of your work. Of the juvenile delinquents that you've dealt with over the years, what have been your success rates? Because ultimately, when you are rehabilitating individuals and even children, you want to make sure that you capacitate them to be better, productive individuals and adults in the future. How have the results been? Do you find that they end up reoffending or go back to committing even greater offenses in society?
Thami, I would say I don't have, again, our accurate stats just due to our time frames that we had, but about 93% of all clients that went through NICRO interventions, they do not reoffend within the following year or two. So in terms of success rate, and just maybe more specifically with the youth, there's one intervention that we did, Safety Ambassador, and the YES program. It's where we take youth on a journey, literally on a journey of 4 to 5 days, doing, interventions outside of the normal environment. So even with those type of interventions, you would find with the safety ambassadors, the youth become ambassadors. They become role models. And with the journey, taking them through the YES program, it's also where they become some form of role model to the peers within the school environment. I must add, funding has a huge impact also on service delivery and human resource and capacity. Maybe at this point I want to urge, if there's a need, and the need is so great, we need to somehow see how we can explore funding and sustain interventions so that, the challenges are not becoming out of control.
Ms. Hoorn, we'll leave it at that for this afternoon. Thank you so much for your input as well as options available for juvenile delinquents. That's Ms. Jacqueline Hoorn, and she is Advocacy and Lobbying Manager at the National Institute for Crime Prevention.